Hi everybody, Al Lindner here with Angling Edge, Fishing Edge Television, and the Ontario Experience. You know, I've been fortunate enough to fish in Ontario, predominantly sunset country, for the past 50 years. And one of the reasons that I love going up there's a lot of reasons, but the number one reason for me is the smallmouth bass fishery. There is so many smallmouth lakes in sunset country. It's unbelievable. I believe the highest population of smallmouths in the entire world are sitting in sunset country. Can you imagine that? And just think about that. That's a bold statement. I can't document it, but it is filled with phenomenal smallmouth water. Lakes, reservoirs, and rivers. And I fished so many of these lakes over the years for smallies. And one of the neat things that I want to share with you, most of the season, the open water season, you can catch smallmouth on the Canadian Shield Lakes in and around Sunset Country in 15 feet of water or less. That changes in fall when the weather gets cold and the lake turns over and the fish start going down. But much of the season, some of the biggest fish are within 15 foot or shallower. Now that could be in some cases suspended over 50, 60, or 70 feet, but that high in the water column if there's Cisco, smelt, tulipy, forage bases like that. But there's a handful of baits that are must-haves. Now, depending on the time of the year, you can catch them on a lot of different kind of lures. But I want to give you my favorite baits. These are must-haves if you're smallmouth fishing in Ontario anytime. Number one, jerkbait. This is the X-Wrap. Hot colors like this are outstanding. Smallmouths love it. It's the number one killer to find fish in shallow water. If they're shallow, they got to show themselves. They see this, they're going to come look at it. Day in and day out, can't beat a popper. Bread and butter popper. You always have to have a spinnerbait with you. And one thing about smallmouth, they like willow leaves, way better than Colorado blades. Smallmouth like a lot of flash. That's why the willow leaf is so deadly for them. When you look to soft plastics, you got to have tubes with you. Mainstays, I like 2 different sizes, even 3 sizes. I'll go really small with a tube. Don't just fish one size, mix the sizes up. You could see on tough bites, though downsizing can make a big difference. Variety of weights to fish, but basically light, you're in shallow water. The last 4 or 5 years, you got to have a boot tail on a jig head. You got to have it. You got to have it. Day in and day out, on many, many days in many situations, nothing will outproduce that thing. The Ned rig. It's been the hottest soft bait on the market in the last 5 years. It is a killer smallmouth. The silly looking, do nothing looking thing called the Ned rig. Boy, they love it. A weightless wacky worm, weightless. And one of the neat things about throwing this, when a bite gets real tough, they'll get on this thing. They'll get on it big time. And weightless is the key. You got to have a lot of patience. The legs wiggle and it falls down real slow, but this thing is so snag free. You could see the way it lays. It lays in those Canadian Shield lakes on those rocks. It doesn't go down into them like a jig head does. When it hits the bottom, it's laying on top of the rock. It could be on top of a crevice even, but it is incredibly snag-free. Hair jigs. If you haven't fished hair jigs for smallmouth, you're missing the boat. There's 2 types that I love to use. This is a VMC Marabou jig. This is the ultimate in finesse. You know, you get tough bites going, and this little thing, it looks like a crappie jig, and 5-pound smallmouth will eat it. It is a killer. You got to have it on a rod anytime you're fishing smallmouth in the North Country there. Then more recently, hair jigs like these moonite, these are called the moontail jig. You can see they're flat-sided here. They're made out of bucktail. They got some fantastic colors that the smallies love. They're about 4 inches long. And the thing to remember when you're fishing smallmouth with this jig or a moontail jig like this, You don't jig the jig. You heard me right, you do not jig the jig for smallies. Cast it out, turn the reel handle real slow. You just keep it going through the water column like this. The slower the better. You start going like this and the walleyes will eat it up like crazy. You want the smallmouth, cast it out, reel super slow. And they just come up behind and go. You're interested in fishing smallmouth in Ontario? Make sure you got these go-to baits. I guarantee you, you will not go wrong. Hey, for more information, check out visitsunsetcountry.com or call 1-800-665-7567 to get a free guide and map.